In 2011, a regional museum received a forgotten box of tools and papers belonging to a 19th-century clockmaker named Edmund Ferris. Hidden inside was a notebook describing a chamber above a municipal clock tower that, according to his family, had little to do with keeping time. No independent evidence has ever verified the account, but the notebook became the foundation for a mystery that still circulates today. A great-grandson had donated the box, largely unexamined, decades after Ferris's death. The notebook inside describes the tower's internal structure in a way that doesn't match standard 19th-century clockworks. This video is presented as alternative history storytelling built around that family account and genuine architectural history, not as a verified historical record. If Story's the official record doesn't fully explain why you're here, subscribe and turn on notifications. New investigations every week. Edmund Ferris was a trained clockmaker, the son and grandson of clockmakers, who had spent most of his career on domestic and church clocks before being contracted, according to his family's account, to help finish the mechanism of a large civic clock tower under construction in 1888. The tower itself was a standard commission for the era. Cities across America and Europe were racing to build tall, ornate clock towers as symbols of civic pride and modern precision, and municipal records for many of these towers survive in reasonable detail. Ferris's family account doesn't dispute any of that. What it describes is something Ferris says he found above the clock mechanism itself, in a sealed upper chamber he wasn't originally contracted to enter. According to the notebook, Ferris was asked partway through the installation to also inspect a set of metal fittings in the chamber directly above the clock face, fittings the architect described only as structural bracing for the tower's spire. Ferris's notes describe something different, a series of curved copper plates arranged in a radial pattern around the tower's central shaft, connected by thin wire to a grounding rod that ran down through the tower's stone foundation. He wrote that the layout reminded him of nothing in his clockmaking training, and that when he asked the site architect what the copper plates were for, he was told only that it was part of the design specification, and that his job was the clock mechanism, not the spire. If this account is accurate, Ferris spent the following weeks quietly measuring and sketching the chamber in his own time, after the work crews had left for the day. The broader historical context here is genuinely documented and worth separating clearly from the family story. Clock towers of this era were, in a great many real and verifiable cases, built with lightning rods and grounding systems as a standard safety feature. Tall stone and metal structures were common lightning strike targets, and protecting them with grounded conductive material was well understood engineering practice by the 1880s. This part isn't speculative at all. It's basic period engineering, documented in municipal building records for towers across the world. Where the family's account departs from that mainstream explanation is in the specifics Ferris recorded. According to his notebook, the copper plate arrangement was far more elaborate than a simple lightning rod would require. Multiple layers, precise geometric spacing, and a grounding rod that, in his account, ran unusually deep into the tower's foundation, well past what he understood lightning protection to need. He wrote that the wiring pattern reminded him of descriptions he'd once heard from an older clockmaker about listening towers, a phrase he never fully explained in the surviving pages, and one that doesn't appear in any standard clockmaking or architectural terminology from the period. According to the family account, Ferris raised the question a second time, more directly, with the project's lead architect in the final weeks of construction. He was told, according to the notebook, that his contract covered the clock mechanism only, and that further questions about the spire structure should be directed elsewhere. No further answer ever came. Ferris finished his contracted work on the clock face and mechanism, and the tower was completed on the schedule. He was not hired for any of the city's subsequent civic building project, though his notebook doesn't state this was connected to his questions, only that it happened. This is where Ferris's account, if taken at face value, becomes part of a broader pattern that some independent architectural researchers have pointed to over the years, though it's worth being upfront that the pattern is read very differently depending on who's interpreting. A number of grand civic clock towers, built between roughly 1870 and 1910, share structural features in their upper chambers that municipal records describe only vaguely, often simply as spire bracing or structural reinforcement, without further technical detail. Several towers from this period have documented unusually elaborate grounding and metalwork systems in their upper section, well beyond what basic lightning protection engineering of the time is generally understood to have required. Mainstream architectural and engineering historians have straightforward explanations for this. Lightning protection standards varied significantly by architect and region in the late 19th century, well before any unified electrical code existed, and some architects and engineers were simply more thorough or experimental than others. Ornamental ironwork was also common in tower spires for purely decorative reasons that had nothing to do with function. None of this requires a hidden purpose to explain it, but taken together and set against a family account like Ferris's, it's the kind of pattern that has kept alternative interpretations circulating for years, and it's fair to say that's currently all it is: circulation, not confirmation. This is the piece that Tartaria and Old World researchers have folded into the larger theory of a suppressed global energy grid, and it deserves the same caveat as always. It is a theory, not an established finding. The argument, as it's usually made online, holds that if a network of resonant, grounded structures once existed, the same idea researchers point to with old star forts and decades later, Tesla's own experiments at Warden, then civic clock towers built at exactly the moment cities were centralizing electrical infrastructure under private utility control could represent a smaller scale, disguised continuation of that same principle, hidden in plain sight as ordinary civic timekeeping architecture. Mainstream historians reject this framework, and it's worth saying plainly, there is no accepted scientific mechanism by which a tower's copper fittings could function as an energy harvesting device in the way the theory describes. Edmund Ferris continued working as a clockmaker in more modest, domestic capacities for the rest of his life. According to his family, he rarely spoke about the tower project, and when he did, he described it only as the job when nobody would answer a straight question. He died in 1927. His notebook passed through 3 generations of the family before it was donated to the museum. Largely unread, its pages describing a chamber that, as far as any independent record shows, has never been re-examined by an outside researcher since the tower's original construction. No verified evidence has ever confirmed that any clock tower was built for a purpose beyond civic timekeeping, lightning protection, and architectural ornamentation. As far as the historical record shows, Ferris's notebook remains an unverified family account, and the engineering of towers from this era is well understood within mainstream architectural history. Whether Ferris simply misunderstood an unusual piece of 19th century engineering or recorded something that was never fully explained remains unknown. His notebook proves no hidden purpose, but it preserves a mystery that continues to invite debate.